Senegal's President Faye is making the West nervous as he is following through on campaign promises to renegotiate oil production agreements with Western oil companies. Complicating things for the West, Senegal appears to be getting advice from Saudi Arabia on how to win these negotiations, and if President Faye is successful, it will represent one of the biggest infusions of wealth to West Africa in recent memory, and a major blow to Western influence in Africa. First, the backstory. Senegal was historically not a producer of oil or other hydrocarbons. This changed in 2014 with the discovery of the Sangomar field by the Australian company Woodside Energy, which ended up having far more oil than anyone expected. Let's talk about the numbers at stake. The Sangomar field is projected to produce over 100,000 barrels of crude oil per day, which equates to an annual value of $2.74 billion. Under the current partnership arrangements between the Woodside Energy Company and the Senegalese company Petrosen, Senegal only receives 18% of the revenue from this production, which is projected to be at $492 million per year. However, this didn't take into account the refined value of the oil, which could be worth $5.75 billion after refining, meaning less than 10% of the gross revenue of the Senegalese oil would be retained in their country under the current deal. Not realizing the scale of the discovery, the previous Senegalese government set up a revenue sharing agreement with the Woodside Energy Company that rightfully came under heavy criticism, particularly from then candidate Faye, for giving up almost all of the profits. President Faye thought his country should follow the Saudi model, where they would buy out the Western oil companies and use the oil revenue to establish a sovereign wealth fund for Senegal. These appeared to be typical campaign promises until it was discovered the president was becoming quite good friends with Saudi Arabia. And remember, Saudi Arabia had a history of bad oil deals with the West in the 20th century before taking control of their natural resources, so they had extensive experience in these negotiations. So what does President Faye want? International negotiations are typically kept confidential by all sides, but if he is being advised by the Saudis, he is likely looking for Petrosen to negotiate a buyout of Woodside Energy's position and then refine the oil domestically. This would create tens of thousands of high-paying jobs and keep more of the money in the domestic economy. But there are a few challenges. Presently, Senegal only has the capacity to refine 30,000 barrels of oil per day, and it would take years of reinvesting profits to expand this capacity to meet the current production. Secondly, Woodside Energy is very good at oil prospecting, and they may discover more fields, so Senegal may very well want to continue the relationship just with more fair terms. But even if they were to negotiate a 50-50 split on production and the refining of the oil, they would increase their annual revenue to $2.87 billion per year, which is a 500% increase over what they have under the current terms, which would give Senegal the capital necessary to develop their own infrastructure and exploration teams, which would mean that the country could potentially be fully autonomous when it came to oil production. And with those assets, they might even look to break from the French CFA. They may not need to take loans from the IMF and the World Bank, and the rest of West Africa might start thinking they could do the same for themselves. So these negotiations represent much more than revenue sharing for an oil field. This could potentially represent a weakening of Western influence in West Africa. So I wouldn't expect the West to let Woodside Energy handle the situation by themselves, but we will have to wait and see what their next move will be. But I want to know what you guys think. Is President Faye going to be able to follow through on his promises to renegotiate the oil deal, or will the West make him an offer he can't refuse? Let me know in the comments below. And as always, if this video provided value to you, give me a like and a follow. That really helps out my channel, and I'll see you guys on the next video.